T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Alrighty, folks. Welcome back to the Launch Sequence Podcast, my friends. If you are here with us live, I appreciate you. Welcome in. We don't do this very often. We're usually doing it for supporters straight off the bat. If you are not here with us live and you're watching it after the fact, well, welcome back to a regular episode. It is DefenseCon, and so we've got... It is DefenseCon, and sorry, I was muted for anybody who was live. So we've got a lot of ships to talk about. We're going to be looking at the Odin, the biggest ship coming to Star Citizen of $5,000 plus concept, probably. We're talking about the Ironclad, which came out kind of unfinished. We're going to get to that. We're looking at DefenseCon, what's been going on with it, the Pitbull, the M80, the Starlite. We got a lot to talk about, and I have brought in the one, the only, the ship guy, Mr. Starjump Grim. Thanks for joining me, dude. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, buddy. I appreciate you having me on. That's a good intro. I'm somewhat becoming known as the ship guy, but we'll see how good my knowledge serves me today.
I mean, I don't think I've ever seen you streaming and there's like not a ship involved.
There's always, there's got to be a spaceship involved in my. I just my streams are even called Shipyard instead of just Starjump.
There you go.
Because I talk ships. So there you go.
And I think the first time we kind of like connected was because you were doing the Fleet Viewer, and we were kind of we were going to start talking ships, and I remember I think that was in production at the time, possibly. Just
we were building it.
Watching that journey. I mean, okay, Star Citizen people, we love looking at ships, and we like looking at them when they look good. And I think you focused on making sure that the ships looked good when people went to look at them in their hangars on your guys' site. So I think a lot of people appreciate that. What's been the biggest sort of surprise coming from building that, though?
Honestly, the biggest surprise has just been the community that's formed around it, which has been really cool. Something I hoped that would happen when we were building it. But probably another big surprise is having CIG show an interest, and even I won't go into it because I don't want to say something they don't want out there, but just CIG pulling me aside and saying, hey, let's talk Fleet Viewers, because who knows, maybe one day in the future we want to do something like that too, more officially, and we'd love your input on it. And I think that's really cool. So of course I gave them data and input and analytics and stuff like that, what people seem to like and stuff. So I do think while not outwardly sometimes getting involved, CIG does know and support all these fan-made projects, whether it's Urkel and this, that, and the other. They're putting the data in the game in a way that a lot of these third-party tools can read the data and build their sites and stuff. So that's appreciated, I think CIG does really notice. So that's been surprising too, and kind of a cool part of it.
There are a lot of community-made tools for this game.
There are, a lot of really good ones too. Some that are very useful in game, and then some that are more like out of game meta stuff, sort of like Fleet Viewer or Hangar Link. So it's cool to kind of see the tools community, and the tools community kind of helps each other out a little bit too. You know what I mean? So it's kind of nice. Yeah,
we have a couple of folks that are really closely involved with our own org that do like mapping tools and HOTAS Helper, and it's just like for a game that's been in development for 13 years, a lot of people, their first question is like, why haven't they done this stuff yet? Obviously, they didn't have the bandwidth to do like the extra bits that make things really nice, and I wish we could have by now. But man, it's crazy how much the community has taken that upon themselves.
Yeah, some really, really great stuff. And some of those tools, I think a lot of people can't imagine playing the game without. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here's the good thing, and I really do mean this. I know a lot of people will sometimes look and go, well, why isn't CIG making those things? I think they will. I think that is the intention at some point. I think they're fully invested in doing that type of stuff. And I do think they appreciate those of us that do create tools at this stage. They need to get the game done. They need to focus on that. But in my discussions with them, there is a real deep appreciation of the community sort of tool thing that has popped up. So
you said you have the data. Could you possibly reveal to us, if you know, what the most popular ships that are like viewed or chosen by people in the game are?
It's I don't know if it's specifically I haven't pulled data specifically per ship, but I can tell you that, it's a lot of the concept ships are still viewed a lot just because it's kind of the only way to view them, and that was sort of the original goal of Fleet Viewer was that I wanted to give people a way to view all these ships they had, but sort of didn't have. Now, obviously, CIG's been cranking through some of the backlog, but I still think concept ships are big, one of the most popular things for people to populate in Fleet Viewer. But then again, people just want to see their fleets, from a top-down 30,000-foot view. So it's a lot of pull requests. I mean, I think I'd have to tap Starlite, but I think in like the last 30 days, it's been just in the US, it's been something like 550,000 requests.
Yeesh.
Yeah, and we have them per region and stuff, but on busy months where DefenseCon or IE or something's going on, it's well into the millions. So yeah,
Good God. Yeah, somebody said it had to be the Odyssey. I agree. The Odyssey is beautiful. I can't wait for that one.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, we started out talking about concept ships, so I say we dive into Defense Week, talking about the big concept ship, the last one, the Anvil Odin. I don't remember
Yeah.
what day it's coming out, but by the time a lot of people listen to this podcast, you've probably seen more about it. But from what we've seen so far, tell me this: who is this ship for?
It's tricky because I don't think we really have a good picture of the ship yet. We know what it looks like mostly. We know it's got a lot of guns on it. But I do think we're missing some significant information on it. Just before we target who it's for, I can tell you right away that the hollow model, the one that everyone's seen, it's missing a lot. It's very obvious when you inspect the model that there's stuff missing from it that Ben probably turned off to bring the mesh count down, the polygon count down. We also know it's supposed to bring on a special feature. You know what I mean? It's got something new it brings to the game. We don't know what that is yet. But ultimately, who do I think this ship is for? I think this is for the person who really wants to support the project in terms of its development. In terms of what they're going to use it for, I really only see one future for this ship, and it's station warfare. Um, and in discussions I've had with people, that seems to be the consensus that, station warfare being one of sort of two in-game or one of three in-game combat sort of gameplay experiences you can do. Station warfare being one, instanced fleet stuff being two, the second one, and then
Mhm.
the pyro PvP stuff being sort of the third pillar of that combat end game. And I think station warfare, the unique thing about that is the stations can't move. They're where they're at. And they're going to be heavily armed and heavily reinforced by those orgs. So any org that's attacking them is going to have to sort of bring everything with them. You know what I mean? And that is where ships like the Bengal, the Odin, the Javelin, and stuff are really going to shine because you're going to be able to bring so much to whatever location you need to fight off the or to sort of take over these stations. Because if you look at the station turret sizes and defense stuff that was gone over in the Star Citizen 1.0 panel, the turrets alone that you can mount on the outside of those stations, they look massive. I don't know their size, but some of them are damn near the size of a Hercules, just the
Yeah,
turret.
yeah, they're
So
gigantic.
yeah, so the stations are going to have big guns, and you're going to need to be able to bring big guns to bear. So that's what I think it's for. I think it's for station warfare. That's the future of this ship, I think.
How confident are you that CIG can create a situation in which you would need an Odin, a Bengal, a Javelin, but also you might need like an Ares or a Gladiator? You know, like can they build all this massive concentration of power and still have interesting space battles with all the different tiers of types of ships going around? In your opinion?
Well, that's a great question. And when I think of what you would need, what kind of scenarios you would need to test to come up with whatever that formula is, man, tactical strike group seems like the first step in that
Yeah,
direction where you're starting to test multiple things, different use cases for ships, support elements, but also a tiered takedown of a station even though this is not one-to-one to player stations in the future, you can sort of start to see where CIG is sort of figuring out what that end game is through these events like Tactical Strike. And I'm not saying TSGs are only for that. I think they're valuable in their own right, but
Mhm.
I have no doubt that the data from those is going to inform, future in-game either large fleet battle stuff and or station warfare stuff. Um, so yeah, I think it's very valuable. I think if the question is, do I think they can do it? All I'll say is I hope. It's a tall order. It's a really tall order. I mean, what you're
Yeah.
essentially talking about is a raid. You're talking about a large scale MMO raid. And anyone who's been playing MMOs for a long time will tell you that they're hard to balance. Even some of the most seasoned MMOs out there have trouble balancing their own raids, 20 years out into development. So it's a tall order for CIG. I wish them luck. I hope they have all the analytics and backend to track so that they can better design things moving forward. So yeah, yeah.
I will say it's really, really nice to finally see some, like you said, an initial step towards that, some kind of experimenting and understanding of what a multi-ship fleet might look like in Star Citizen, even if it's the most basic thing. I'm glad that there's something in the game that encourages people to put a fleet together and go try it out.
Yeah, I mean, and this goes into a lot of other things. I just did a show on multi-crew combat and what CIG needs to do to make it something people want to do. And there's a lot, obviously, you can go into long conversations about CIG needing to find ways to incentivize crew roles, incentivize payouts, building, obviously, social and org tools and stuff. All of that is part of the equation of why you would take something like the Odin into battle, right? And that's a question that CIG, I don't think, has really given us a good answer on yet. They've shown us hints to why you may want to, but we definitely don't have the full picture. Even a lot of the gameplay loops that they put into these crew roles on large ships like that, in my opinion, they're all reactionary crew roles. They're crew roles that only come into play when you are reacting. None of them are proactive crew roles other than
Yeah.
the pilot. And I think when CIG can start rounding out those crew roles, those operator roles, whatever you want to call them, to be both proactive, reactive, all that kind of stuff, then we'll start to understand A, how viable these big capital ships are, and B, are they worth it to bring to bear? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I think that's the big question mark hovering over ships like the Odin, the Javelin, even the Idris and Polaris and ships like that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
One of the things that started to pop up on that topic recently, a topic of conversation they've had is those hollow globes. I didn't think much of them, but the more and more you get into these battles with large ships, large distances, and things in between, the more you realize you really need an overall
Yeah.
breakdown, like a good, easy to see graphical representation of where everything is, because it's hard with all these distances.
And to see things within that sort of 3D space, what's below you, what's above you, all that kind of stuff. And then that okay, that is a visual representation that is being powered by your scanners, your computer system. Okay, well then what are the roll-on effects of that? Okay, hacking, e-war, all that. Like, how do we disrupt that visual input, right, that
Yeah.
players are getting via the hologlobes? You could extrapolate that to communication and many other things, but there's just that's the biggest challenge for CIG is not the individual system ideas they have, but how they all tie in and affect one another.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
systems, the
Hmm.
tools, as they
The
say.
tools. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's go back to the Odin real quick because we've been talking
Yeah.
about the good sides of it. I want to talk a little bit more about the what I think is going to be probably the biggest headlines that reach the outer gaming space coming from this DefenseCon, and that is the price tag of the Odin. How much do you think it's going to come out for, and how do you think the general gaming industry is going to react to not just this picture being sold, but also um, at some point the method by which people have to apply for it will also, I think, come out. And what do you think the reaction to that's going to be?
It's the articles will come for sure, for sure. The one thing I've been thinking is that I do think it's interesting. CIG is sort of putting the Odin concept out on the last day of DefenseCon. There could be something to that in that they want to ride the positive wave of DefenseCon first, then put out the Odin, which I'm sure they're full aware is going to have some negative stuff written about it. But if you if you're looking for a way to sort of tamp down the negativity surrounding the Odin, one good way of doing that would be saying something about Squadron that reaffirms its 2026 release date. So not only are you doing this crazy sale for this JPEG, but you're also doing one of those, hey, promises made, promises kept thing. We're doing the 2026 release,
Yeah.
So I think that's what they're going to do. I'm speculating on that. I mean, I do think the Odin's going to be around the $5,000 price range. Um, I've heard some people say, well, maybe it's higher and maybe it will be higher. I don't think there's a reason for them at the moment to go much higher. They can always do another sale next year where they bump it up a little bit or whatever. But I think it's going to be around 5,000. It's a big ship. I mean, I measured it. It's 750. I measured 743 meters long, give or take a few meters. So let's say 750. Not all of that being usable space, just to be totally clear. But I took the interior of the Javelin. I ripped the interior of the Javelin out and kind of put it in there, and I was able to get almost 2.5 Javelin interiors inside the Odin. So it is a massive, massive ship. But the funny thing about the Odin is I've talked to a lot of people about this ship, and to me, it's been kind of I would say a ship that has been kind of 50-50 split. As many people I've found that are excited about it, I've found another same amount of people that are like, that's not for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So I think, in terms of how many CIG's probably going to, I have no clue what their limited wave thing is, but I would assume they're going to try to sell 100 to 200 in this first push during DefenseCon. Hey, Depotes, I see Depotes in chat. Nice to see you. I think that it's going to be somewhere around that. It's still going to be a very limited thing. I think this ship is a decent ways out, but it also wouldn't shock me if this ship is in active production, actually. Like backburnered active production.
If they sell 100 of these, man, that's $500,000 at the prices that we're expecting, right?
Yeah. If we
That's
think
crazy.
of it that, I mean, it goes a long way. Yeah. I mean, I originally thought the Javelin was going to come this year because I thought, oh, that would be a good idea for them if they were putting out a new concept, the Odin. Deliver us the other giant ship that is kind of almost there, because that means you're kind of starting a new one, but you're delivering one. There's kind of that give and take there, and obviously they said Javelin's not coming this year, so it's I have no doubt they're going to sell all of these that they offer, however many that is, 50,
Yeah.
100,
Yeah.
200.
Yeah.
I have no doubt they're going to sell them all though, but I do think it's going to be around $5,000.
Do you think
What
it
I'm
will
thinking.
punch above its weight class?
I think it's going to, yes, in the sense that, again, I think it's targeting station. So I think it's one of the first ships that is actively not meant to do battle with other ships. I mean, you could go up against a big Vandal ship, or if another org in the future has a Bengal, they're flying around for sure. But I have a feeling that CIG is designing this specifically for a certain type of gameplay. And I think we'll get revealed to a bit more on that when Anvil Day comes around, specifically those fixed turrets. I've heard a lot of people in my community talking about those being like flak cloud cannons and stuff that can disrupt scanners and all kinds of stuff. Whatever,
Yeah.
and then supposedly the special feature the thing has, whatever that special feature is, I think it's tied to whatever that in-game thing they're looking at for this ship is, and I don't think it's battling other ships.
Okay.
That's what I think.
I
Yep.
I ask that as a joke, but I appreciate the answer because you're not wrong. There's there
Yeah.
is the possibility of things getting even bigger than this. In my
Yeah.
mind, I'm probably taking a more negative take on this.
Mhm.
And I think this is generally just because we only just got to the point where the Idris is useful, right? So to think of a ship that's this big, because I'm sitting here thinking, how are they going to make the Javelin? Makes sense. To see
Mm.
a ship that's this big, to hear that it is only going to be presented as a picture, and maybe they'll have some good stuff for us when they finally release it, but to hear that, to hear it's this big, which obviously is going to be a very small amount of people who can use it, and then also to know that it's just a picture, and it doesn't feel great to me. I know that,
It's hard for it to feel good, to be totally honest with you. Even to
yeah.
me, it's like, mm. But here's something I will say that's kind of interesting, and this is probably the thing I'm most looking forward to on Anvil Day. You brought up the Idris, and we've talked about the Javelin a little bit. Those two ships are really interesting. They were made. The funny thing about them is they really weren't made for us. They were made for Squadron 42. They were
Yeah.
made for a cast of characters. They were made for a story. We you know, we haven't really got a big combat focused capital ship built for the PU first. Now, to be clear, I do think the Odin will show up in some later squadron chapter or expansion, but specifically, I think the Odin is being thought of as PU first, and in that regard, it'll be interesting to see what new design direction CIG goes, not knowing that this doesn't have to tie into or be restricted by the squadron and its narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And where I'm going with that specifically is crew count. The Idris and Javelin have massive crew counts because they're supposed to support a massive cast of characters. If you look at newer ships go into the PU, like the Perseus and a lot of these newer concept ships, their CIG's really trying to make an active push to pull crew counts down a little bit, you know, and it's through a variety of means. But for example, I think the Kraken will require less crew than the Idris technically on paper. Now, maybe not in reality, but on paper it will. And I think the Odin's going to be that way too. I do not think, for example, that the Odin it'll be the most crew intensive ship, like CIG said, but I don't think it's like double the crew count of the Javelin, if that makes sense. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I think it might be a few more than the Javelin, but it's not going to be like 500 people are required to fly this ship. I don't
Yes.
think.
Yeah. And that is a very good point. I'm wondering, do you think it could be even like just close to the Javelin? Because the Javelin's crew count's already massive for an MMO.
It is, and I think it lasts. It's like 80 something for the Javelin, but the only kicker there though is a lot of people say I think that's a bit of a misnomer. It's 80 for both shifts. So because they're accounting for the crew shifts in squadron. So if you cut that in half because you don't have to worry about shifts in the PU, then your active crew for the Javelin is probably about half of that. I could see the Odin though. I could see it being a ship that's, 60, 70, 80 crew people to man. Um, we need to see why you need that many people though. And the ship has a
Yeah.
lot of turrets, but it doesn't its hollow model doesn't have that many turrets. You know what I mean? It's like even if it's 16, 17, 18 turrets, it's still not a lot when you consider the man. What I think we're missing from the hollow model is I think this thing is peppered with smaller turrets. Like, and those have been removed for the sake of polygon count.
Right.
But I have a feeling this thing might have like freaking 25, 30 manned smaller turrets that we're just not seeing.
That would be pretty crazy to have that many turrets. I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder. I think even an 80 or 60 person count for the Javelin is like a lot of your turret gunners are doing double duty on engineering. It's just in general. I think you are right, not even just from the ships that they're bringing out now, but the Idris and Javelin probably won't need as many people as it says on the crew count long term either.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah. And if you just look at the way people fly ships, they don't, we're already sort of heading to a place where people do not fully outfit every single turret. That's kind of a rare night. You know what I mean? What turrets do you man? You man the ones that are more likely to be employed the easiest. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's what I see and stuff. And but again, the Perseus, this Tiburon and stuff, those are ships that you can kind of see. CIG had the opportunity to go higher crew count, and they didn't. You know what I mean? And that's I think part of the reason why those two ships are very popular.
Yeah.
Perseus is very popular, and the Tiburon I think is going to be very popular.
Tiburon's going to be popular. Let's talk about that ship because it is a very interesting one. I only just got the chance to see the interior today, but same interior as the Hammerhead. Exterior pretty similar to the Hammerhead. You can kind of tell and see where it got switched over, but it does have some really nice design elements on it. What do you think of the Tiburon so far?
Look, from a look perspective, I love it. I think it looks awesome. We're working on it for Fleet Viewer as we speak. It looks amazing. I think it's a disruptor ship, and that's a problem. And when I say disruptor ship, meaning it disrupts the balance, which is not a good thing. I don't think the ship should have received a size 10 beam weapon. I think beam weapons being pilot controlled is already problematic to the capital ship combat balance formula. I understand the reasons why they should technically be pilot controlled, but I do think it upsets the balance CIG is
What is the reason for it to be pilot controlled?
I think there's this argument that it's so linear and locked that the only person that could properly have any sort of targeting influence over it is the pilot. So it's natural that it goes to the pilots, I guess, is the thinking there. The problem is because of the way people fly ships in Star Citizen. Again, you got to put away the realism stuff, simulation side of this. The way people fly ships in Star Citizen, they'll just solo the ship and fire the beam weapon. Now, in a 1.0 world where there's all these other systems in place, Death of a Spaceman, all this other garbage, maybe that's not so much of a problem because you wouldn't want to go out by yourself. But in the game right now, it's a problem, So, and when you take in ships like the Polaris and stuff, which has its main armament being torpedoes, but those not being pilot controlled, you start to get into this place where your ships aren't balanced in terms of operator roles very well. And then with the Tiburon, what you've actually done there is you put a capital weapon on a non-capital ship. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You've put a capital size 10 weapon. I'm calling it capital because we've only seen size 10 on capitals. But you put a capital weapon on a large ship, which is kind of disrupting. You know what I mean? Now, it is bespoke. They could tune it down. But CIG has been very clear that it's an anti-capital ship. But it's a large ship. It's sort of like making a constellation that's custom built to take down an Idris. You know what I mean? It's the Idris killer constellation. It's sort of like making a featherweight boxer now taking on a heavyweight, but the featherweight's designed to destroy the heavyweight. You know what I mean? It's just this weird balance thing I think that CIG gets themselves in. Now, saying that, I do not have the 30,000 foot view CIG does, and maybe they have a plan,
Yeah. But do you think that this is going to eat into like the Perseus? You think a lot of people will pick this over the Perseus because they can't do any damage in the Perseus while they're flying?
Yeah, state that question again.
So if you were taking a large ship, or I guess a Hammerhead sized ship, to go out and fight other large ships, do you think because of the solo nature that you were saying people fly the ships, that people are just going to take this over a Perseus because you need 2-3 people on a Perseus and one in this?
All day, and that's what I've sort of been hearing from people. In the game environment we're in now, people are like, "Oh, I'll just take it out, and if I get destroyed, I get destroyed. But at least I'll make a big enough impact on the battle that it's worth it." Now, again, in that post 1.0 Death of a Spaceman environment, maybe it's not worth it to get destroyed to affect the battle to that degree, but that comes back to that question, which I was just talking about on a recent stream, which is, do you play the game for now or do you play the game for 1.0? And it's tricky. It's part of the reason I don't worry too much about balance right now, though, because the game is just so wildly out of balance. And I almost think it's impossible for it to be balanced in any sort of way until we get those other systems that we probably won't see till closer to 1.0.
Yeah, it's kind of why it's problematic that people are buying ships based on how they perform now instead of how they're going to perform in the game, and they can't know how it's going to perform in the game. And CIG comes out here and changes prices of things. CCUs become unavailable. Buybacks don't work, and I think it's just part of what makes kind of muddies the waters throughout the course of the game's development.
Yeah, and look, none of this is like a death nail to anything. They have all the knobs and switches here. For example, there's no reason why, if this isn't an upsetter to the Idris, there's no reason in the future they can't just say, "Oh yeah, we've changed. The Idris is a size 12 beam weapon." They could do whatever they want. Oh, that's all made up. But the one thing we don't really fully get a picture of, and it's why that Star Citizen 1.0 presentation was so great, is that we so rarely get a picture of like that high level view of how CIG is looking at stuff. Like for combat, for example, we don't really have a full high level view of how CIG sees all these ships playing against each other. You know what I mean? And all that. So um, the Tiburon will be interesting. I mean, I think there's enough stuff they can put in it to bring it back down to earth a little bit. But on paper, with that size 10 supremacy beam weapon it's got, it seems a little scary. It seems a little scary. Now, in the Q&A, I think John Crew mentioned that, and I believe this, I actually do believe this, I don't think this was just him talking, a fully crewed and a good crew, a fully crewed Perseus is going to be better at its job than a solo person in a Tiburon. I do think that is the case.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be able to bring all 4 size 8 Medusa cannons to bear. So it is, again, you're rewarding that crew count. But let's be totally honest with ourselves. A solo person in the game right now in a Tiburon is throwing things out of balance and probably will. And that's just how it is. So.
I mean, 3 people in a Perseus versus 3 people in 3 Tiburons might not be able to win the fight.
Right.
Right. That being said, I do wonder what it would have been like if they had made the laser pivoting able to be directed and then gave it only control to the co-pilot.
Sure, yeah. Or just made it a size 9 or something. Would that really affected the ship's role? I mean, it would still been an anti-capital ship. I mean, size 9 for God's sakes. But so not sure where CIG's thinking is there. I'm hoping we get. I'm really looking for the Q&A, forward to the Q&A on the Tiburon. I hope it's not a bunch of softball questions like, is this a variant of the Hammerhead?
What does it fit inside of?
Yes, I want to know a little bit more like what the intent of the ship is. But, again, it is a very different. It's a very different approach than the Perseus has, and again, it's just gonna. I think it just comes down to effective crews, and we'll see how the Tiburon performs, and hopefully CIG can balance it. So
yeah, I hope so. All right, now for the MVP of the show, the star, the one that this whole event really focuses around.
That's right.
Ironclad has finally landed, and it's been a little bit broken. But we'll get to that. Let's start first with like the good.
Yeah.
What are you enjoying about the Ironclad so far?
Well, I haven't done a lot with it in game yet. It's one of my top 3 ships though, so it's like right up there, on like my ships I was most looking forward to. So I said this recently, but I really judge ships in 2 ways. Like if you were to give ships like a score, right? I give them 2 types of scores. The first one is on how well does the ship go from concept to flight ready?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, does it look the same? Because I do think that's important. What you sell people in concept is what you should deliver them. Does it look right? Did they add a little bit extra beyond the concept? Did they do a lot of quality of life stuff? Does it do its role good? That's first impression.
Okay.
And I think on the Ironclads, they nailed it. I mean, it looks great. They both do their role really nicely. CIG added a few little extra things in there that are really nice things, such as the VLS torpedoes and stuff. How well does it do actually in practice, playing the game? That's going to take me a few months to figure that out. But in terms of just that initial presentation or initial thing, though, which is like, hey, this was the concept, now we delivered it. I think it checks all the boxes. Not too surprising, though. This was a new concept.
Yeah.
So I was expecting it to be pretty one-to-one to what CIG sold us. So
it's definitely, to me, it's the first large-scale industrial ship, to me, it feels like. I know the Reclaimer exists, and people find interesting uses for the Idris. But this is the first large ship that feels like it was brought into the game specifically for industrial people to figure out how to play in groups. And I, like you, have not gotten a lot of chances to put that all the way to the test. I've been mostly flying around the assault. But it's exciting to see that part of the game flourishing more, from the gameplay to also these ships.
Yeah, you know what's funny is so the Kraken, Nautilus, and this were like my top three ships, right?
Okay.
And all strangely, they were all concept ships until now. This one's now released. Um, and I did not want my first experience of it for it to be like broken and a mess. So that's why I purposefully have not messed with it much in the game, because I want CIG to kind of smooth it all out, get everything working,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted my first experience in the ship to be like, wow, this was worth it. I was really waiting for this and stuff. So I've been a patient boy. But in the little bit of walking around I've done, I'm really excited to see how successful the Drake stylings look at this scale, because I think that gives us a good understanding of where the Kraken's going to end up, and I think it's going to end up in a good place. But more importantly than that, what you're seeing with the Ironclad and what you saw with the Perseus specifically, a little bit the Polaris, but especially the Perseus, is you are seeing what level ships can go to when a manufacturer kit has been matured. And and when I say a manufacturer kit, I don't mean that they just have a bunch of ships that they can pull from that manufacturer. I mean an actual toolkit they've built. And the RSI and the Drake one are very far along, and you can see that in the Perseus, which matured from the Polaris, and you can see that in the Ironclad. And I think that's just going to lead to the Galaxy being absolutely amazing and the Kraken being absolutely amazing, because again, those manufacturer kits continue to not only grow but get more refined and optimized. So
Yeah. Also, the purpose of the ships, as they
yeah,
say, the later your ship comes out, the better. You're going to be more
yep.
happy with it.
Yeah, yeah, and those manufacturer kits are really great, just so people knows, because they're all the boring parts of the ship technically. So they're the walkways, the hand railings, the stairs, the doors, ladders. It's all that stuff.
Mhm.
But because they're part of the toolkit, they get further refined all the time, and CIG can do like geometry optimizations and stuff to them. So what that also leads to is bigger ships that are more optimized, like, and more performant. CIG even mentioned that in their latest PU monthly report on how the Kraken is getting a little bit of extra attention in the optimization category right now, even in its late white box phase, because they want the ship to be performant. And that, I think, is a big win for CIG, that they're considering that at this stage, and the manufacturing kits is what allow that.
Yeah. The difference between the way they build the ships now versus like back when the Reclaimer came out, for instance, is night and day. Not even just
Completely different, yeah.
not even just the kits, but also just like their understanding of the branding. And I know they keep changing some of the branding here and there, but I do think that the changes they make with the branding are at least more consistent amongst themselves. Like, I think that they've gotten better at knowing, even if an Origin ship that comes out now looks different from 2015, I do think 2 Origin ships coming out now look better from the same brand than 2 Origin ships during that time period. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And the fact that CIG has that internal brand team now that was highlighted in Inside Star Citizen a few years back. And that brand team has really been trying to sort of pull together all the brand elements for each one of these manufacturers and reinforce them a little bit. And I think that has been a big reason too why we've seen ships sort of take a step up. They've got more identity, they've got more like personality, because again, CIG's leaning into the brand identity a lot, which I went to school for branding and marketing originally, and that's a big thing for me. And we're seeing that now in these ships, and I think that's really going a long way. Um, and you also see it on the lore side of things. So, for example, you know, Drake has been, over the last several years, CIG's been pivoting it, and it started with a Jump Point article that was an interview with the Drake CEO. But they've been shifting Drake to not be the pirate company anymore. They want him to be the rock and roll, punk rock, blue collar, go grab a beer with your friends company.
Mm-hmm.
And They're doing that with a lot of manufacturers. They're like shifting them slightly, giving them this identity. And that identity, I think we are seeing coming out in the ship. So, like, if you look at the Ironclad, one of the really cool things I noticed about it that you don't see in other Drake ships is that anywhere where geometry comes together, like a geometry mesh syncs up,
Hmm.
they've got like a bead of welding around that. So it's got weld marks all over it, which is really, really cool. First off, it's very realistic, but two, it just reinforces that branding identity of Drake because they're the only manufacturer that does the welding marks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, it's a minor thing, but I think it does play a big role in the ships looking better than they used to.
Yeah. And I think another company that's kind of starting to get that is MISC.
Oh yeah. Yeah, MISC is the next one I think that's gonna get it. I think it was RSI first. Now they're kinda doing a lot of that with Drake. I think MISC is next. Consolidated Outland will probably be soon after. Yeah.
Which means Odyssey, please, CIG. Actually, no, never mind, because they don't have the whole scanning thing figured out. That would be bad.
I would say that um, I do think I've gotta think the Expanse is in production already. But after the Expanse, I mean, obviously they can come out with new concepts all day long, but in terms of backlog ships for MISC, you're only really left with 4. And the Odyssey is the most likely of those to go into development because
Yeah.
you're left with the whole D, the whole E, the Endeavor, and the Odyssey.
Yeah.
I do think the Expanse is probably the next MISC backlog ship we get, but yeah, I think the Odyssey could be. I think it could go in production next year,
That would
at least
be,
in
oh
pre-production. I think that's
man.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A pre-production I could see. And I do think that there is a chance that the pre-production of that ship does actually line up with their development of more deep space scanning, because they
Yeah.
seem to be liking to start developing those gameplay features in line with the ships that run them. Speaking of which, refining they've talked about, and you just mentioned that possibly the Expanse. I was really hoping the Expanse would come out this year. Do you think if they're working on it, they might try to bring it in with refining this year?
I think it's coming this year. Yeah, I really do.
I hope you're
I think
right.
it's coming this year. I think it's John Crew kind of made a little interesting mention of it. I think it was on the last. I think it was on the DefenseCon like ship show Q&A they did just a couple weeks ago or a week ago. He kind of made a very brief mention of the Expanse. I do think, and they said that. Well, the more importantly thing they said was that refining gameplay is like a high priority.
Yeah.
The Expanse is the refinery starter. So to me, it is, and you can see them churning on MISC ships in that starter category with the Starlight and hull B, hull A, stuff like that. So I mean, I cannot imagine a world where the Expanse is not in development already.
I really
Um,
freaking hope it
and
is.
yeah, and targeting for later this year. So yeah, I think it's coming.
Let's talk a little bit about, just to pivot back to the Ironclad before we move on. This is a very, very hyped ship. It's been in production for quite a while. People were really excited for it. I think a lot of folks are pretty disappointed by this data in which it released. I don't know, you said you've been kind of avoiding it, but there have been problems with like falling through the command module. There's sound bugs. There's the quantum travel bug that's going on where it keeps switching over to SCM. And I'm wondering, like, from your perspective, how you think that ended up happening. Do you think something just
I
happened with the ship development, or?
I think there's a bit of an internal dilemma that CIG faces where they want to hold back on these ships to keep them somewhat of a surprise for the event. But at the same time, they really need to be putting these things in testing much earlier, whether it's Evo or whatever. Personally, I wish the ship had gone to Evo much earlier. The problem is CIG doesn't. I don't know how well they enforce the NDA on the Evocati thing, and and the people that are in Evocati don't respect the Evocati NDA enough like they should
Yeah.
to keep things back. But that being said, the ship definitely needed some testing before it landed. Um, the other argument is, well, we are in testing. This is an alpha game, so it's this weird dilemma that they're in, where it's like the live game is still a testing environment stuff. But yeah, it arrived in a rough spot. I think it was a little disappointing to see it arrive that way. That's why I've kind of held off from playing with it. Um, Here's what I will say about it though. I'm not overly concerned with specifically the Ironclad. If this had been the case with like the M80 or a different ship, it probably or even the Tiburon, that would concern me more if they arrived like super super broken. The only what reason I'll give the Ironclad a little bit of leeway is it also came with new feature tech, and
Yeah.
I was fully expecting the feature tech to be broken on release. And we could see there were feature tech issues with the command module falling through it, how it was registering. That was to be expected. Anytime feature tech comes on, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll give the Ironclad a little bit of grace, but I agree with you. It was a little bit of a rough way to launch a ship, especially on day one of DefenseCon, just kind of
Yeah.
already broken out of the gate. So,
The big
um,
hype piece.
but in the same vein, CIG backers, players, citizens, we are a hopeful bunch, and we project to the future sometimes, and we all have that kind of a lot of us have that mentality of like, okay, it's in this terrible state, but the idea is that it should be really great. So I think a lot of people are holding on to that, and it'll get there, but I just think that feature tech needs to mature a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that some folks will look at this as another sort of sign of, this whole marketing versus development push is like, do you focus on marketing to hold it back, build more hype and make a big surprise when it drops? Or do you focus on like the development and well-being and let people test it, even if that means that some early shots of it are going to leak out and make people less likely to buy it?
It's a tough one. It is really a tough one, and I've had some discussions. I originally, before I went to marketing and film, I actually was in game design originally in college, and so a lot of my friends still went on and became game designers and work at game companies, big and small. And I've had this conversation with them a lot about testing at scale because that's something CIG talks a lot about. So I've asked them about it and stuff, and it really is a whole different world where even though CIG did do some initial testing with the Caterpillar and stuff in the PTU and Evo builds, there's really no replacement for testing at scale and the live environment. And I think I think we're all just so accustomed to it now that CIG sort of just releases things now, understanding that they're going to be broken to some degree. I do think that problem is going to get a little bit more difficult though when Squadron is out and you start having what I would call mass market gamers that play Squadron that say, "Oh, I want to check out this MMO thing."
Hmm.
I do wonder how CIG will need to approach the testing environment then. Like, do they lean more into the marketing side or to the testing side? Because I don't know how well those mass market gamers are going to put up with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Stuff
this,
being hyped up is like, hey, we're delivering it to you as a final thing, and then it's broken on release. They're not going to
yeah.
put up with that. So CIG may have to change how they do that. We will put up with it because we're hopeful, but I think the mass market gamers will not.
I think it's even becoming less likely for us to put up with it. I think that
Well, I don't. Yeah, I agree with that.
they're pushing their luck with these releases because, like you said, this is a tech advancement coming out with the Ironclad, but they have informed us for now years that tech advancements would run through the tech preview channel first to try and get rid of these problems. And while they've done that with some things like engineering and what else? We got a couple, like we got the inventory tech preview, and they've been doing it a little bit, but there were some things that definitely slipped through here. And I think having the command module in the tech preview would have possibly helped with this.
I agree. And the crazy thing is they really had the perfect platform to test it early. They had the Caterpillar. We didn't need the full Ironclad yet. You know what I mean? But even the Caterpillar and the command module testing for that was not in Evo very long. I mean, it was it was only like a couple days, and that was it. And you never saw it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. I think that's what really made me happy about this period is a lot of folks are looking at last year and thinking year of playability, what the heck happened? And it was because they didn't drop new features in. So now they turn back to a year of dropping new features in, and they kind of give us some confidence that, well, these features are coming in, but they will be tested. So it's not straight back to that 3.x style of development. for them to just now start dropping. I mean, the transportation rework, did that ever end up getting a tech preview?
It did. It
Yeah.
did get well. I can't remember if that was an Evo or a tech. I think it was an Evo tech build or whatever. Yeah, it did get one. It did get one, but it was limited to Area 18, the transit refactor. And then what's the other? Oh, we're still waiting on like the ATC refactor. That one's the one we haven't tested yet.
Right.
We know that one's in development though.
And I don't think refueling was in the tech preview. Not to say it needs to be. I'm just saying these are features, and like that whole pipeline was kind of meant to give people more confidence that these things wouldn't be as broken when they landed.
Yeah, I think that the tech preview channel is something that hasn't been utilized by CIG in the way I think a lot of us players were thinking they were going to utilize it. I think we were always thinking that, oh, there's always going to be some big back end tech running, whether that's, server meshing or whatever the feature tech is, and we're always able to kind of go in there and test it and stuff. But when it has come, and whether it was engineering on the tech preview or whatever, it was always very limited in scope and only lasted like a couple days. And I'm not sure how much data CIG was able to get from that, but a lot of times it was for some of us, you probably got to test it maybe one time, if at all.
Yeah.
It was just up too short. So
Well,
and I think and I'll say this, I think that will become it becomes doubly more important when a ship has a lot of feature tech on it. So the Ironclad's one thing with the command module, but I go to ships like think about the Pioneer. It's got a lot of feature tech involved in it.
yeah.
Drones, manufacturing, crafting machines, integrated ground extractors. The list goes on. I hope that's a ship they have in testing much earlier. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be so much new kind of stuff involved with it that has to be tested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's transition over to the Drake Pitbull. From big to small,
Yeah.
Drake is releasing a lot of ships this whole event. What do you think of this, like, out of nowhere snub fighter from Drake?
I I put all the snub fighters in one category, and this isn't to hate on them. I think they are what they are, but I look at them as just like you're logging in the game to just mess around and have fun one day. They're not. I don't really know what purpose they ultimately bring to the game. Like, why would you choose it over just taking a light fighter, medium fighter, whatever?
Yeah.
That being said, I will say that repair, rearm, refuel services are giving snubs a little bit more meaning to the fight, like a little bit more, because now they can be like a more persistent annoyance during the fight. Um, I do think there's a future for snub ships, though. I think they're going to be the great little ships to take and scout around your base to make sure there's no interlopers, and they're going to be great for that. But for me, these are these are the e-bikes of the verse. They're fun to have. You can scoot around, you can get to A to B in them. You might want to own one. But yeah, you're not, they're not going to make or break any job, any career loop for you or anything like that. So, in terms of this one though, obviously Drake's answer to the Fury. I think every manufacturer is going to get a snub like this, by the way. I really do think CIG is going to do that because they are easy sellers. They're low points of entry for new players to come into the game. And so it makes sense that CIG would do these. And I think that's kind of what they are. I think they're onboarding assignments for ship developers, but I think they're onboarding for new players as well. These and like starter ships. They're a low price point way to grab a new player and potentially a new player who's going to end up spending thousands in your game over time. You know what
Yeah,
I
but
mean?
they're not selling these with starter packs, right?
They're not selling with starter packs, but again, it's just think of it like this. Okay, you have your new player. He or she bought a starter pack. They bought the Salvation starter pack. They got the game package, and then they see this come out, and they're like, $50. I'll buy this too. That's not the. I think there's a lot of players out there that have no intention of buying $200 ships, $300
Oh,
ships,
yeah.
$500 ships. I think there's a lot of players though that, oh, you know what? I just got paid today. I'll pick up this crazy little snub fighter. You know what I mean? And I think that is an important player base that CIG has to attract, and that's what they're doing here. Now, I would like for the snubs to be slightly more useful. I think they're actually the most useless for combat roles. I think more like tractor beam base snubs and other snubs that do things like that, scouting and stuff like that, scanning. I think are probably more useful. But yeah, in terms of what I think of the Pitbull, I like it because I'm a Drake fanboy. So I like it for that.
Hmm.
I did buy one. I got suckered into it. I bought one with credits, and it's a
Gonna
lot of
upgrade
fun
it
to
at some
fly it
point.
around. Well, it'll probably be upgraded at some point. I do enjoy it though. I have fun flying it, but it's got no use for me.
Right.
It's just it's a nice to have. It's a nice to have.
And it does not have a quantum drive, right? To confirm.
Does not have a quantum drive, but I gotta tell you, again, I think this ship is informing other ships we're gonna see. You know what I mean? When I take a look at this ship in person, all I can think of is, oh man, imagine if some of the design elements here were applied to something like the Buccaneer or the Herald or something like that. There's so many nice little things this ship has, and hopefully it was a good onboarding task for the ship team, and as they're making more Drake, because we're going to get more Drake ships over the course of
Yeah.
this year and next, and those lessons will go on to those smaller form Drake ships, because of course we got the Ironclads, we know the Kraken's coming, but I imagine we're going to get some smaller Drake ships, maybe some refuelers, maybe a Drake refinery ship is coming, stuff like that. And and
Yeah.
and these smaller ships are good for that. They help onboard those ship designers.
Don't you think it's a little weird that the Drake snub ship is more expensive than the RSI Legendary Aurora Mark II?
Yeah, that is a good one. It is weird. Yeah, yeah. I think the $50 price point is too expensive for this ship. The funny thing is, I think a lot of these smaller vehicles and ships, I would bring them down a lot. So, for example, for me, the Drake Mule, that thing should be like $15, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
This ship here, I think this ship should be $25.
The small ground vehicles, definitely. They should be like
Yeah,
really easy pickups.
yeah, yeah. But even this, like the Pitbull, I think it should be $25. Without a QD drive, it's very limited. I think $25 all day long, and I think
Yeah.
that's even on the pricier side. But I would say $25 is much more fair. The funny thing is, and I don't know what CIG's metrics are, and maybe they've studied this. I almost wonder if, man, if you just price this at 25, see, they're problematic now because they can't do that. It upsets the price balance. But if you did
Yeah,
put
that's
it
the
at
thing.
$25, you'd probably sell a shit ton more.
They start pricing
You know what I mean?
ships at $25, then people are like, why in the world are skins 20? And then they
Right,
have to drop the price of skins. And then, yeah, that's probably why they're not doing it.
right, right. And unfortunately, CIG has sort of baked themselves into this price ladder that we have that they kind of can't go lower now in order to sell more of something. They've got to,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? And if I had to guess, like I could be wrong on this, but if I had to guess, I think they probably regret that a little bit. Like if they could change it now, I think they would like to probably price some of this stuff a little cheaper with the intent of selling more of them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
but
there's like a serious price crunch around the original price of the game, around 30, $45, because it was like you had to have the starter ship and the game package equal $45. So then the starter ship has to be a little bit less than that.
yeah,
And like, because you're now putting ground vehicles at $20, suddenly you're like, okay, it's either less expensive than a ground vehicle, more expensive than a starter ship. It's just it's a mess.
yeah, yep.
Jumping up from snub fighters, though, we've got a new heavy fighter coming. Now, we don't have hands-on experience with this, but you can go into the DefenseCon hall and see the new Origin M80. And we've gotten a couple shots of it in trailers and pictures. I'm sure you've gotten to kind of mess around with the 3D mesh at this point and
Yep.
have some thoughts on it.
Yeah, yeah, we just finished it for Fleet Viewer. We haven't integrated it into the site yet, but it's done. It's one of those ships that from the interior, it's the opposite of the Herald to me. The Herald is a ship that I love the interior, hate the exterior. The M80 is I love the exterior and I hate the interior. The I think from the exterior they did a great job on it. I think it's going to be. I think they referred to it as having a sort of an advanced DNA that not all Origin ships will have, but maybe some special Origin ships. So that's kind of cool. And I do think it has Origin vibes dripping off of it. I think exterior is a success. I think they were trying some different things with the interior. I'm not sure that was successful. Interior is not my favorite, but I think they're going to sell a ton of these. This is in just talking to people about ships. This is the other ship with the Tiburon, and this one are the two that I've seen the most people that like usually are not interested in getting a ship at all.
Yeah.
They're those people that are just like, I got my starter pack. This one, for some reason, this M80 is the one where I'm seeing people go, you know what? I might get this on top of my
Yeah.
starter pack. You know,
I'm
it's the
seeing
one
that
ship.
too. What the heck is it
Interesting.
just because it's so extreme, the design?
I think so, and it's like ships like the Kraken, where it's calling back to something from a nostalgic standpoint. CIG leaned into it with the Origin M80 already, with the sort of Top Gun F-14 sort of stylings to it, the
Hmm.
F-22 Raptor kind of stylings. And it's just one of those things. We see it, the instant connection is there. We automatically fall in love. It's not like something completely new that we've got to kind of fall in love with. We already love it out of the gate. And so I think it's going to be very, very popular. The big thing with this one is how much is it? Because it's Origin, it's supposed to be advanced, and it's a heavy fighter.
Oh
So
boy.
what price regime is it's going to play? I think it's going to be $300.
We
That's
were
where I'm.
yeah, we were getting around 200 to 300 in stream today. I think
Yeah.
yeah, the origin angle is definitely gonna bump that up a bit.
I'm still personally, from when it comes to heavy fighters, I'm still very partial to the Scorpius. Obviously, a different platform, multi-crew, but I think this is going to speak to a lot of people. I think this is going to be one of the. I think this will be one of the most popular ships sold at this DefenseCon. I think it's going to be kind of the breakout star. Normally I'd say the Tiburon's going to be popular, but I think the Tiburon's going to be extremely expensive,
Yeah.
and I think this is going to be the one that can like scratch people's itch, but they're not dropping $800 on it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I expect them to sell a lot of these.
This is the one that will yeah, I think you're right. It's right in that price range where they could probably sell a decent amount of them to people who want to spend money, not so expensive that people will be scared away from it. But effectiveness in game is another question. We don't know armor, we
Whole
don't
other
know
thing.
shield. Well, I guess we know shields, but we don't know how this stands up to the competition, which it seems is most closely going to be the Guardian.
Yeah, it's that's going to be the big question mark. I think that needs to be something that, that's going to be something that takes a little bit of time. Now, one thing I will say about this is just my own personal ethos when it comes to purchasing ships with real money. Everyone should follow their own, compass on this, obviously. But for me, I don't get too concerned about the numbers right away, like in terms of like, okay, is it doing X amount of damage and this amount of strike damage or alpha damage, this, that. I don't get too worried about that because CIG is going to change the numbers on stuff 3,000 more times before we get to 1.0. But what I do care about is um, the role that it's in. It's a heavy fighter. What other offerings are on the table in the heavy fighter category, and what niche does this one serve? Right? Is it a niche ship? Does it sort of fall? Is it a heavy fighter that falls into this like niche category, or is it a heavy fighter that falls into a more generalized kind of run of the mill heavy fighter category? And then just based off how you play the game, making that decision. Um, I generally don't get too obsessed though if like, oh, it's not performing great this patch, because you'll drive yourself crazy because
Yeah.
this stuff just shifts all the time. I mean, all we're hearing about now, for example, is CIG's mentioned it a few times, is this new flight model. Well, how are all these ships going to fly when we get the new flight model? We don't know.
Ooh
So
boy,
it's just
yeah. Oh my
so
gosh.
the only way you can buy these ships with any sort of confidence is to buy them off their generalized role. Buy the ship if you're looking for a cool looking heavy fighter. Okay,
Yeah.
this may
Yeah.
be any other factors you consider, like its damage, what size weapons it has, and all that. I would put those in the secondary category because they're going to change and probably will change multiple times.
As terrible as it sounds, I actually encourage people to buy ships based off vibes because generally it's the
100%.
vibe that will track more than like the exact numbers or components.
100%. And if you're buying off of vibes, you will put up with a patch or two if your ship is just not performing that well because you still love it because of the vibes. You know what I mean? And I have ships that don't perform very good right now, but it still drips with cool factor, and I hope in the 1.0 version of Star Citizen they do perform well, and that
Yeah.
hope is there. So yeah, I think that's great advice.
And it's advice that's only for people who want to spend money. It's the first
Yes.
advice I give anybody is don't spend money, obviously. But if you were going to buy something, like I always feel bad for the folks who will go and buy like a gosh, I don't even know. Let's say what's a good example? I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but there are a few ships that if you bought it back when it was first launched, the Apollo. That's one, like, if you bought the Apollo because you were planning on being the drone reconnaissance person picking people up in very hazardous places as opposed to just having a mobile clinic you can use, then you're very disappointed in the ship right now. Because is it going to have drones? They say it will. Are those drones going to work how we expected? Who knows?
Yeah. And if you read between the lines, what CIG's actually said in regards to drones is, we'll see how these base building drones work out. That's
Right.
essentially what they've said, and that's good. That's probably the most honest way they can say it. Instead of saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry, they'll get in." First we got to see if these drones work at all.
Yeah.
So again, it's so. For example, I bring up this ship a lot, and not to tangent us, but I bring up the Nautilus a lot because I really like the Nautilus. But I don't care what size mines it carries. I don't care what kind of mines it's going to have. Why do I enjoy the Nautilus? It's very simple, and it's related to its role. It's a combat ship, but it's the only combat ship that is not offensive in nature. It's defensive in nature, right? So for me, that's the only reason I like it. Now, CIG may come out with another defensive combat ship, and I might like that one. So I'm not getting wrapped up too much in the Nautilus in terms of like what size mines does it carry and what yield do they have. I'm looking at it more just from a high level. Hey, I would like to play combat, but I'd like to play it from the defensive posture instead of the offensive posture. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
again, I think if you approach it like that, you're not 100% safe, but a little safer in being good with your investment. I'll put it that way.
One of my favorite moments in fiction, I say that, but I might actually be getting some of the details wrong here, was come on podcast. Come on folks. You know what game I'm gonna call forth. What Halo, of course. The Fall of Reach had this really nice space combat sequence where they were going to be overwhelmed by odds that they could not fathom, and the like shipyard platform in orbit took it on itself to be a defensive shield and fly in front of the fleet and give them a chance to live. And that was always that just for I don't know why, but it just sticks in my mind how you can just do that. Like, it doesn't matter what your spaceship is meant to do. If you can figure out a way to make it affect the enemy in a defensive way, offensive way, whatever, you can do that. And I like the idea of a defensive focused ship because it still has that energy.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think that's just interesting in general whenever you can approach an existing gameplay loop, but approach it from the opposite side. That is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Again, that's not saying that future mine lane gameplay is not going to be garbage. Maybe it is. And then I'll regret my decision. But right now, in terms of do I own a Nautilus, it's purely based off the fact that it's defensive combat gameplay, and I kind of like that. But
Mm-hmm. All right, before we move on from the M80, I do want to ask, wheels on a ship, yes or no?
no. Only because they don't function right now.
Okay. All right.
You're talking to someone who grew up at an airport as a kid. My mom and dad both pilots. I love a ship that can taxi, plane that can taxi down a runway all day long. If they can get wheels working, I'll be a 100% wheels dude. I'm not sure they'll get them working. Other games have tried it, and it's always a semi-janky. So I'm hoping they can get it working good. We'll see.
They could probably just
The
like find whoever
ground
made it
vehicle
work.
gameplay does not inspire confidence. I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say they could probably find somebody who worked on it for like DCS, right? Just
Mhm.
just grab them.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe
We
so.
need
I
that
mean,
little wheel energy.
I had someone tell me one time in game design that making tracked vehicles like tanks is one of the hardest things to do. I think we were specifically talking about World of Tanks or something like that. And they were telling me about all this impressive tech. They didn't work for that company, but all that impressive tech. And there are some weird things like that that are hard to do in games. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? I think wheel tech when it comes to aircraft is something that's always a little tricky. Some games do it really well, Flight Simulator and DCS and stuff. So will Star System be able to do it well? We'll see. Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so. We
God,
have a.
I'd love to do some landings though. That would be so cool
That's
to
what
do
I'm
some
thinking.
rolling landings.
That would be sick. Imagine rolling down the deck of one of the Kraken landing
Oof,
pads just to
pretty
feel
awesome.
like you're on a carrier.
Yeah. Well, and if you look in the last Squadron 42 gameplay trailer they showed, they did change the way ships are launched off the Bengal. I don't know, not
Yeah.
a lot of people noticed it, but before the ships just hovered up and flew straight. Now they're actually attached to some sort of like Gravlev cradle that throws them out of the front of the Bengal at a high
Yeah.
rate of speed, which was kind of interesting. I mean, that's a little different than what we're talking about, but um, yeah, it'd be cool to have a carrier that you actually have to roll and take off, especially if you're in Atmo. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you're in Atmo, maybe you can get it to a higher top speed in takeoff, but
It's
we'll see.
it's kind of funny the idea of needing to get a spacecraft to get up to a certain speed to leave the carrier when it could just like
I know.
slowly float out the front.
Yeah, it's a weird, it's that World War II and space vibe that
my
Chris is going for.
my mind lore likes to tell me that they just have pilots that are so bad they can't fly straight down the hallways. Like, we need to guide
Like
you.
we're gonna safely get you out of the tunnel, and then we'll let you fly your ship. Yeah,
Lot of lives at stake here, guys.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it seems we have a similar kind of love for the airplanes coming from childhood. I was actually born on an Air Force base, so I also
Oh, nice.
kind of had that airplanes constantly as a baby. And just, yeah, I love being
Yeah,
around airplanes. I miss them. I honestly, I miss
yeah.
it. We live kind of close to an airport here, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up when I was a kid till I was about 15, well, probably about 13, and then we moved and stuff. But before that, I grew up at the airfield. Like, I was
That's sick.
constantly there, and I do miss it too. Yeah,
That's pretty cool. I think there's a lot of like I mean, obviously we're all kind of nerds here, right? But there's a lot of space and spacecraft and airplane folks playing this game, and it's just a freaking joy. I think that's why the game's done so well, because you're funding a crowd-funded game based off of selling spaceships to spaceship nerds, and so they just get basically unlimited time to actually make those spaceships matter. So it works out
yeah,
better than a game that was like built around, I don't know, selling horse armor. No offense,
right.
Oblivion, but like
Yeah,
there's so much more passion in this kind of stuff, and I guess
yeah,
less
absolutely.
choice.
Hmm. Absolutely.
All right, what is? Let's see. The Starlite
Yeah, the refueler.
refueling. Yeah, so this is an interesting one
Yeah.
because it kind of supersedes the Starfarer a little bit. How do you feel about that?
Um, I am. First off, I did not like the ship when I saw it in their teaser preview image they released. I thought it looked like not right about it. Seeing it in game, I think it looks a lot better in person, like in game, and I like the ship a lot now. I think it looks really cool. But MISC is not my favorite manufacturer, but I would have preferred maybe an Argo refueler. But that being said, I think the ship's going to serve a great purpose specifically because it is bringing. I think the reason we're getting this ship is because they were working on new refuel tech, obviously, and more new refueling stuff and refueling missions and all that. But the big showstopper here, and again, it's not specifically the ship, but I think they're sort of tangentially tied, is the fact that we're getting NPC-based refueling that you can request via beacon.
Yeah.
That to me, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. That's like one of my top 3 4.8 features, that alone. And it's one of those things that you're not going to run out of fuel very often, but when you do, having this feature is going to be clutch. And so for that little thing alone, I'm like, yes, I love the Starlight. Bring it on. But yeah, would I prefer this to be a different manufacturer? Probably. I don't dislike MISC. They're just kind of in my tier of manufacturers. They're kind of in the middle somewhere. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah. MISC
and
is
they
in
have
this.
the Starfare. I was hoping for a different manufacturer on the smaller entry level refueler side of things, but I think it was smart of them to make the fuel pods tie into the Starfare and have that synergy there. So I think that's good.
Yeah. Better than they've done with the mining bags.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's interesting to see this ship coming in right now. I mean, like you said, the feature is the most interesting part.
Yeah.
It's a bigger deal than I think we're all really giving it credit, that this is the first time NPCs have been tasked with doing anything not combative in this game.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
it's a
works.
huge deal. It's a huge deal. I think it's the first, to me, and not to like oversell it, but to me, it's the first step in making NPCs a real part of the world we're supposedly living in. Because you're right. Right now, they've really just been sort of either an antagonist or window dressing
Yeah.
in a landing zone. That's kind of the role they played. But for them to really start taking on non-combat functions, I think is really, really interesting. You know what I mean? And so I agree with you. I think there's sort of like a hidden importance with this feature coming online that I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. This really goes to the teleportation question. I really hate to drag that up right now because that'll take up a whole podcast. But when you think about NPCs coming to refuel you, if we had a problem in Star Citizen where the systems were too big and people were running out of fuel, and it was basically you run out of fuel, it's because you didn't plan well enough. Okay, well that sucks. What do I do now? You have to backspace and go home. That would have been a huge complaint in Star Citizen, and this feature coming in would have made people realize, oh, I'm glad they didn't remove the idea that we would run out of fuel, because now it turns out an NPC will come refuel me in 10 seconds. That seems fine. And then when we expand that, and you think about, what if you don't have a ride? Oh, maybe an NPC can come and take you
Taxi,
somewhere you need to go.
especially if the ship that you would normally claim to your new location is fully laden with custom everything, and to do a full claim of it, to pull it would be super expensive.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking of that feature, right? Um, Being able to just grab a taxi ride would be amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And maybe it's limited to just stations and landing zones, not to where it's like your specific random areas on planets, but just landing zones and stations. It'd be a huge deal.
Yeah.
Huge, huge deal.
So I hope they
And
keep expanding that this year.
I really do. And the funny thing is it's kind of a footnote in the 4.8 site, their webpage for it, with tactical strikes being the big marquee item.
Yeah.
But for me, this is actually probably the more important immediate feature of 4.8. I do think tactical strike groups is important for the long term of Star Citizen,
Mhm.
but the refueling thing is huge, like you
Yeah.
said.
And it kind of makes you wonder, what are they going to do now? Now that we are getting to the place where they are rebalancing fuel, they're now giving us refueling components that do things differently. There is a refueling ship that will be available to the average player in 6 months. Are
Mhm.
they going to start to limit fuel more? Are they going to start to expand sizes a little bit more?
Yeah, and the other thing that I like that, and I think this is important. I mean, I think CIG thinks this as well too. So, but refueling has always been held back by the Starfare's price. So
Yeah.
$300. So essentially, in a way, refueling gameplay, it was behind a $300 paywall. You could
Yeah.
look at it like that. This, hopefully, the cheap ship, it brings that paywall down. More people can access the gameplay loop. You might also see more players out there doing the role, because now it's not only is it locked behind a $300 paywall anymore, but it's also not locked behind a very large and not always fun to fly big ship in the Starfare. And no
Mhm.
hate on the Starfare. I think the Starfare is a really cool ship, but it was sort of locked behind that. You know what I mean? And now there's a new path for us to get refueling. I think that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, and drawing attention to it by developing it might have made it more obvious there was a paywall, so maybe they're more lenient with expanding it now that there's something a little easier to get.
I think that, and I think this is 100% why we saw changes to which ships are going to be our base builders. I think it was 100% a paywall decision. Originally they had the medium base builder, for example, not to pull us off topic, but the medium base builder was that big Atlas Anvil style builder. Okay, well, those
Mhm.
are usually expensive ground vehicles. They've now turned the medium builder into the little Argo,
CSVs?
CFV or whatever, so much, much cheaper.
Yeah.
I think it was literally to bring the paywall down for medium bases because what you essentially did with the Atlas vehicles, you essentially said, okay, to build a medium base now, you need two things. One, you need a $200 ground vehicle, and you need a $500 C2 Hercules to bring the damn thing to your location.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, you locked medium bases behind like $700 worth of ships. You get
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
By turning into this little ground vehicle that can go in the back of a cuddy, you've now changed that cost paywall dynamic, and I think that's always a good thing. And it looks like
Absolutely.
CIG's heading in that direction heavily. We're getting all these really, really small industry smarter starters like the Salvation and the Fortune and Gollum, all that.
It's also why there should be like an FPS version of all gameplay too. So you could just
Yes. Yeah.
try it out in a less high investment scenario as well.
Agreed.
All right, we got two more ships to go over. I'm going to let you choose between these last two because they're both very interesting topics. First is the Stingray, which we don't know about, may not be coming during DefenseCon, but it is on people's minds, so I wanted to bring it up. The second is the Shiv Grays, the Gray Shiv, basically getting the first version of a cosmetic ship kit that we've seen in the game. I'm interested in your thoughts on that. So which sounds more interesting first?
Well, you're the one who brought up horse armor earlier, so I think it's only appropriate we talk about the Shiv's cosmetic war bonds.
All right, Mr.
Um,
Gray Shiv.
so I will say I love the Gray's Market stuff. I'm really excited for the next one coming in July. Um, I will say that the Shiv is a really fun ship. I am glad they brought cosmetics to it. I would love if that's sort of Gray's Market's niche, is that maybe they're never as good as any other ship, but they have cosmetics, so they're kind of fun. I could see that being their niche. Um, at first, I will say I was a little not happy that the cosmetics were all war bond. I would have preferred maybe out of the 3 packs, 2 of them being war bond only, and maybe one of them being something you could get with credit and another path to it. They're all war bond. Grown to accept it a little bit now, and that it is the definition of a microtransaction cosmetic now,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
and I'm fine with that. If something's going to be a microtransaction, let it be purely cosmetic. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So, the main thing is what this means for the future of Star System, but also specifically Gray's Market. Um, I do think the next Gray's Market ship we get, the Basher in July, I think is going to be really built around the concept of cosmetic customizing. And I think it will launch with some stuff. So that would be kind of cool. And I do think that gives CIG further ways to monetize ships without getting into the sticky area of flight blades and weapon kits and all that, which I'm pro weapon kit, but it does allow them to avoid that and further monetize things the way they've done with like liveries and paints.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good thing overall because the game does need to be funded. There needs to be funding avenues for this game. I think it's one that I'm totally fine with, purely cosmetic, allows you some personal touches. I didn't think the cosmetics were overly overpriced. Could they have been $3 or $4 cheaper? Sure, but they were still pretty affordable and stuff. So I was excited about it, and excited to see where CIG takes it in the future.
It's interesting that we are now kind of going full circle and we're getting to normal purchases in game. Like what people would normally think is okay in a game is like a little additional attachment to your ship. I also do agree. I think that a ship kit like this, not only is it a good way to fund the game, lets people make their ships look a little bit differently without giving people Lego blocks to build spaceships out of. I hear you on the Grays exclusivity on this. I think it would be a cool, nice touch to make every manufacturer have something that's truly different. But I also wonder how cool it would be if every ship company you couldn't do it for like the parts applied to every ship. So I don't know how you could do it, but to have people be able to customize their ships a little bit more than just the skin or the paint on the
Yeah.
outside would be cool.
What I hope is in the future, you will be able to grind up like Cousin Crow's rep or something like that, and through Cousin Crow's, you will unlock blueprints for specific ships. I don't think the CIG will be able to do it for every ship in the game. Maybe
Yeah.
800 years before that's complete. But select ships, maybe one or two from every manufacturer that has some cosmetic capabilities. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Some just add-on pieces that go on the exterior of the ship. They don't alter the shields. They don't alter the armor numbers or anything like that. They're purely cosmetic. Um, I would love to see that. I think it's a great niche for grays right now, but I do hope it comes to more manufacturers and ships. So.
I think this definitely goes to show that CIG is willing to look for a lot of different avenues to try and help with funding. And they're not all going to be direct ship sales. And I hope that they continue to find ways, especially cosmetic and customization focused, to give people the opportunity to spend money outside of buying just ships.
Yeah, and it's not completely without precedent. I mean, this is the first exterior. We did get the 300i sales originally where you could customize the interior a bit, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then it just kind of went away and we never heard about it ever again. So it's kind of nice to see this come around. It was a bit of surprise, honestly. Out of all the things, this was probably the biggest surprise out of DefenseCon that these were coming. I had no clue. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, you also mentioned the flight blades.
Yeah.
Those are back on the store. I mean, they might have never
Yep.
left this. I don't remember if they were off the store completely. But they have flight blade deals on the store now for a number of different ships.
Yeah.
It reminds me of last year. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I did confirm. Apparently, the new flight blades are in game available now too. Like,
Yeah.
so they're all available, which removes that part of the controversy. Um, I'm one of those people that I didn't get as animated about the flight blade thing even last year as most other people did, and I think it's okay for the people that were not happy with how CIG did that. It was totally fair. The reason I didn't look at it is being too big of a deal is because I didn't really look at the flight blades as a like pay to win buff to your ship. They do buff the ship in one aspect, but then they nerf it in another aspect. So to me, it was more of a tuning blade, where it like sort of like retuned your ship, and maybe not tuned it in the best for all scenarios. So I just kind of looked at it more as a trade-off thing. I do agree they should be for sale in game day one as well. But also in my testing of blades, I just don't think they make much of a difference. You know, so I like almost like maybe for racing, but like I personally I feel like the blades should have slightly bigger impact than they do. They feel a little bit kind of weak to me, honestly. Um, Nice to see him come to more ships. I guess I was thinking CIG would do computer blades a little differently though, and it does have me worried for blades. Because I have a list of all the blades that CIG was sort of originally planning when they're
Mhm.
thinking about computer blade, and they seem to be making them per ship. And I was hoping that we would get computer blades that were just okay, this is a speed and handling blade, and it could go in any ship. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And they seem to be like tied to specific ships, which I don't totally love. I feel like that's just going to make it much harder for CIG to create blades for all the ships in the future. If you have to take the 15 blades they were sort of planning on making and then multiply those times 200 ships seems crazy. Than just making 15 blades that can work in any ship. Um, but yeah, I don't know. They are what they are. I don't think they have as big of an impact though as I was hoping.
You think maybe that's because they're leaving room for the upgraded versions, the crafted higher tier versions?
I think that's very possible. Yeah, and I don't. And there's still a lot that goes into that. I think there's the crafted stuff. There's the future of sub components, which I think are still on the drawing board. I have a breakdown of those as well. And I think when we get to a future where you have engineering, tuning, crafted components and blades and subcomponents, you're going to be able to like wire all that together to get a really good performance boost in certain areas for these ships. It's just right now in the state that we have it, it's not it just feel like it feels like it doesn't have as much of an impact, I guess.
Well, you bring up a good point that, as far as I was aware, they introduced blades as essentially the subcomponents of computers. But at this point, if they are
Yeah.
making blades per ship, that doesn't really make them a component anymore. So my whole stance on the flight blades is that it's kind of the precedence, the sort of nature of a slippery slope, in that when they called these subcomponents, that put them into like a category for me. And if they put subcomponents on the store, then I feel like that opens it up to components. So I guess my question to you would then be, would you be okay with them adding any other of the component parts of this game or ships to the store, or does it end with flight blades for you?
I want, oh, well, components, no. And the reason components, I do think components would be pay to win, because the way CIG has approached components is that, by and large, and I'm not saying this is 100% across the board, but by and large, the Class A militaries tend to be the best components. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you sell those, it's kind of like you just buy all of those, and that gets you 90% of the way there. And there may be some outliers there. I'm not a component master, but um, I think the blades are much more specific, where it's like, okay, we're giving you 5 points in this, but decreasing you 5 points here. You know what I mean? It's sort of like either or, and so I feel like that's a little bit of an easier manage for CIG, but um, components would be a red line for me. I do not want them to put components on the store.
So for you, it's about the effect they actually have in game.
The effect they have, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Components, CIG is already sort of baked in with the class system. They've sort of already baked in what component is better than the next component. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Now, again, it's not across the board. There are outliers where certain components do certain things better for certain situations, but by and large, you're wanting the class A's. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think that's sort of the overall rule. So if those go on the store, that's what everyone's going to buy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think
I hear
that's a
you there.
problem. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was good talk about the gray stuff. Let's talk about, I guess these are kind of like the potential ships that are coming out relatively soon,
Yeah.
possibly after DefenseCon. We know there are 2 Gatac ships. Maybe we'll get to those, but first I want to hear your thoughts on this potential Kruger Stingray. Do you think this is a surprise for DefenseCon still, or do you think it's just somewhere else?
No, I don't think it was ever meant for DefenseCon. The entity string showed up in the game in one of the pre 4.8 builds, but that's pretty common. We've seen that happen to many ships. It happened to the Hermes and stuff, where the entity name shows up much earlier,
Hmm.
and people think it's coming. I hope the Stingray is an Eclipse competitor. We don't really have an Eclipse competitor, a single pilot sort of stealth ship capable of delivering 2 big torps, sort of thing. I'm kind of hoping the Stingray falls in that category. But if it's something different from Kruger, then I would prefer something like a multi-crew medium ship from them would be kind of cool. Um, Whatever it is, I do think it's still going to be on the smaller scale. I'm thinking, medium, maybe heavy fighter side, but more like medium size. I don't think Kruger is graduating yet into like the large ship category.
That's going to be
So I
cool
feel
when they
pretty
do.
confident. Yeah. It is going to be very cool because I love Kruger. The Alpha Wolf is like my guilty pleasure ship, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, but eh, so yeah, I think it's still going to be like a smaller ship, medium, heavy fighter at the most. But
Hmm.
um, my current money is I'm putting it on like an Eclipse competitor.
Okay. That
Yeah.
would be interesting. Eclipse, which can now carry like size 12 bombs or
Which,
size 10 bombs. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
All right. And how about the Gatac ships? We know that the Raylan is coming, but they have said there are going to be 2 revealed. Do you think they're going to bring us another flight ready Gatac ship on Alien Week?
I I think so. Um, I think what we're getting, and I'm totally prepared to be wrong on this. I'm a big Raylan fan. I do own one. It's the only alien ship I own. Um, I think we're getting the Raylan, and I think we're getting a Raylan variant that is a salvager. That is what I think we're getting based off clues in the game files. The Raylan does have hard points for salvage tractor beams on it. That could be a red herring, though, in that we may not be seeing what we think we're seeing there, but the hard points on the railing on both the left and right side are listed as salvage tractor beams.
Huh.
Um, so based off that and a few other little things, I think we could be getting railing, which is cargo, and then whatever that variant is, that is salvage. That's sort of where I'm thinking right now.
All right. That would be
Yeah.
really cool to see an alien salvager.
Yeah, I'm not expecting a new Gatac ship that's like completely different though that we didn't know
Okay.
about. I'm not expecting that. Not that I'd be against that, but I'm thinking it's essentially two Raylins. Now, it may not be a Raylan variant. It may just be based off the sort of like the Tiburon and Hammerhead. It may be based off the Raylan, but be a different name ship.
Yeah.
The one weird thing I will say though is that the salvage hardpoints on the Raylan are on the Raylan, like the actual. I think the file name in the client file is called Gamma Raylan.
Huh.
And Gamma standing for Gatac manufacturer. It's like they're part of the Raylan. So I actually think it probably is a variant. Now that I'm saying that out loud, so I think it's
Okay.
probably a Raylan and then a Raylan variant. Yeah.
Interesting. A salvaging alien ship would be cool. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
How cool would it be if you were in a Xi'an ship? The Xi'an were less likely to be bothered by you being in like their star system or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool, right? Like just by flying the ship, you get a little bit of
Yeah.
like cred. Yeah, I see. Ruben says Jared mentioned an alien snub on SCL today. I mean, that's the other way it could be. Maybe to again get people up to speed, designers on that ship language. Maybe a Gatac snub is coming. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Um, but and here's the thing, and that could very well be the case. Just because salvage hard points were found on the Raylan doesn't mean a salvager's coming. CIG just should have been playing with that idea at some point. It could also mean a salvage Raylan is coming next year. I don't like to read too much into sometimes what we find in the data mines. But it's just, if I'm considering things, I could see a salvager Raylan selling really well. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people would like that.
Oh yeah. I think people just in general want more multi-crew industrial ships.
Yeah.
All right, man. To finish off our talk, I have I get predictions from everybody who comes on as a guest to come back over in the next like quarter or two when you come back on. Personally, I really liked your Raylan prediction, but if you would like to pick another one, you can, because it's always fun to see as many as we can. What do you have to say? What do you think is going to happen in the next few months? That's kind of a hot take.
What do I think? What do I think is going to come from a ship standpoint or from a game standpoint?
It could be anything that you want.
Okay, I'm going to say that I think I'm going to make a prediction on ships real quick. I think we're going to get another important Drake ship this year. Later this year, like late this year. I think we're going to see another really important Drake ship possibly filling out a hole that's been in the Drake lineup for quite some time, which is that heavy fighter and medium fighter role. I'm expecting a Drake ship to fall in that category. That's my prediction, and I'm ready to be wrong.
All right. I'm looking forward to
my prediction.
Cool. I'm looking forward to testing that one out. I'm also going to hold you to the Raylan variant because I like that one. And I want it to be true.
Yeah, it's listed there in the files, the salvager hardpoint. The only thing I will say on data mines is the data mines you do got to be careful with, because they are sort of like, sometimes they're just stuff that CIG's playing with and they never see, you never see the light of the day. For example, the Hermes, when it first showed up, it was the Aegis Hermes. It wasn't even the RSI Hermes. It showed up as the Aegis Hermes, which maybe that was something different than what we got. Who knows? That's the thing, is that when you data mine, you got to be careful, because you're just sort of seeing CIG's, off the cuff thinking sometimes as they're developing a game. So
yeah, that is absolutely true. And there may be still RSI Hermes out there, or which one did you say was?
Aegis.
Aegis, yeah, an Aegis Hermes out there called something else now.
It could have just been a developer who put the wrong name into it. It could be that simple.
Yeah, that's true. The pains of reading into people's data.
Yes, yeah.
To wrap things up, can you let folks know where they can come to find your Shipstradamus predictions and information?
Yeah, I'm on both YouTube and Twitch as Starjump_Grim. You can also check out the Starjump Fleet Viewer at starjumpfleetviewer.com. Real easy. I did just add the Ironclads and the Pitbull up, and the Odin. Added that one. But it's really cool Fleet Viewer. Could check that out. And then yeah, you'll find me in those three places. Usually twice a week. I usually stream on Wednesday and Sunday nights. So look out for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining. We have been trying to get this talk to happen, and I'm glad we finally did, especially on Invictus Week. Good timing.
You've been very patient. I appreciate it.
I wait for the good stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So thank you again for joining me. I appreciate you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. We do this every week. If you're looking for another podcast to listen to about video games, Star Citizen, space games, we'll get into other games every once in a while, but it's a good time, and we have been publishing every week for the last 260 weeks. So if you want to subscribe or follow, we're on audio platforms. We're on YouTube. We do new guests every week. And for those of you who are here live, thank you so much for watching live. If you're not, I'm streaming all the time as well. Either way, thank you guys all for watching or listening. Hope you enjoyed. I will be back with you all who are live in a couple seconds, so don't go anywhere. See you in a minute.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Space.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody. See you next week.